There are a lot of different options when it comes to arcade controls. In this video, we'll be showing off a couple pre-built joysticks and some of the more popular sticks and buttons. First up is the Hori Rap 4, and here's Triple M to tell you all about it.
This is the Hori Rap 4 Kai for PlayStation 4 and PC. This stick uses Hori's own Hayabusa joystick and buttons. The feel is very similar to Japanese arcade controls like Sanwa and Seimitsu. It's a metal and plastic construction with a nice heavy base to keep it grounded when it's on a table or if it's on your lap. This stick is wired only, which is great for low latency or tournament play.
I like this stick. The Hayabusa joystick is one of the best sticks I've tried, and I had no difficulty executing moves. When I first tried it, I was surprised at how good it was. The buttons are a little sensitive for my liking, and they move around in their housing a little bit. I don't think they're bad at all, but they just aren't what I would prefer. However, even with that, I didn't have any problems pulling off moves and all my button presses registered. Next up, we have the XArcade Tankstick. Since Triple M owns and has used this controller far more than I have, I'll let him tell you about it.
The XArcade is a stick made with all-American parts. This is the stick that people who don't know what they're talking about recommend to other people. The good things about this stick are, the construction is really nice, it was shipped to me within 3 days of ordering, everything on the box was spelled correctly. Now on to the negatives, which is pretty much everything. Mushy controls. The sticks and buttons are HAP controls, and there has been a marked decline in quality overall from the HAP brand. You can feel it in the XArcade. I personally replaced all of the buttons and both sticks in this XArcade with brand new factory HAP parts, and it sucks just as much. There was no improvement whatsoever in the control of the sticks or in the action of the buttons. The original switches wore out within 2 months of receiving the stick. We played a lot of Hyper Street Fighter 2 on it. The sticks have always shown problems with properly registering directions, especially diagonals and quick movements such as Shoryuken. The button layout is also weird. Buttons 7 and 8 are below buttons 1 to 6 instead of to the right. Compare this with the Hori stick that we just showed you. Overall, do not buy the XArcade. Almost every other option is superior in quality and cheaper to purchase. Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
What are you trying to do there?
Spinning windmill kick. Windmill kick. Quarter circle back and strong kick. Nope. Quarter circle back and strong kick. You guys on YouTube watching this, I was so excited when I bought this. We were so hyped, and we spent so long working on this thing, but it is just a piece of garbage.
Like, you can hear...
It's like the Retron 5 of controllers.
You can hear when you're doing the diagonal, it engaging different ones with just tiny movements. Let's see if we can hear it on camera. So... one of those is doing a diagonal, that's diagonal, and that's not a diagonal. Do you see how much movement there is there? Diagonal, not diagonal. That's the main problem with these HAP controllers. Show us,
get the second round
show
too,
us
yeah.
a Hadouken, a Shoryuken, and a windmill kick.
Oh god, I'm trying to do Shoryuken. Nope. Ugh. There's your Shoryuken right there.
And that's why you shouldn't buy the XArcade.
Exactly. These
are your standard HAP buttons. If you grew up in America or Europe, you know what these feel like. They're alright, I've got no complaints with them. This is a Mad Catz fight stick that I modded with Sanwa buttons. Similar to the Hori Hayabusa buttons, the Sanwa buttons are a little too sensitive for me. I have a habit of resting my fingers lightly on the buttons, and the Sanwa buttons just don't let you do that. Again, this one is personal preference. They're good buttons, and people love them. They just need to provide a slight bit more pressure before I'd call them perfect. Overall, They're great though, and you should definitely look into trying them out. In my main cab, I have the Seimitsu LS-32 stick and some generic buttons. It's one of the most popular sticks on the market, and for good reason. It's good for fighters, shooters, side-scrollers, you name it. It's also highly moddable and lets you put in different springs to adjust the tension to your liking, in addition to having a variety of different gates to adjust the movement of the stick, from 2-way to 4-way to octagonal, round, and square. Personally, I like the square gate and find that it's almost perfect for any type of game that you want to play. The buttons I have look awesome with their LED domes and chrome rings, however they are extremely stiff. I tested the force needed to engage the buttons, and while the Sanwa buttons only needed 60 grams of force to depress, these needed a huge 250 grams. It's just way too much when you need to rapidly hit a button. Finally, we have the Sanwa JLF stick and some generic buttons. As far as I'm concerned, the JLF is the gold standard for fighting games. I never have execution errors with this stick. It might not be as well rounded for all genres as the LS-32, but for fighters, I'd say it just barely edges out the LS-32. If you're building a controller, I'd highly recommend using an LS-32 or the JLF. Whichever one you choose, you're getting a great stick. The buttons in this cab are generic buttons. I like that they have a little click to them like hat buttons and have just the right amount of force required to push them at 90 grams. I actually prefer them over the Sanwa buttons. If you find them, give them a shot and you might like them just as much as I do. There are dozens of options for sticks and buttons out there, and no one combination is going to be right for everyone. My personal recommendation if you're going to build a controller would be to use the Seimitsu LS-32 stick and Sanwa or even generic buttons. With practice, you'll find out what your personal preferences are and go from there, but that combination will give you a great start. Oh, and don't buy the XArcade. I know it's tempting. There's adapters and it can be used with a ton of different systems. It looks cool, but don't do it. Seriously. People are going to try and get you to buy one. You're going to see tons of people recommending it on forums. Just resist temptation, and as much as it hurts to say this, listen to Triple M on this one.